Hi everybody, it's Christina from Pretty Distressed. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a very beginner-friendly makeover and show you how you can make over a piece of furniture like this that has a factory finish, that is not real wood, and it's going to be easy enough for someone who has never made over a piece of furniture before. So if you want to see this makeover, just keep watching. This is the dresser I will be making over today. I got this off of Facebook Marketplace for free. It is a Stanley piece of furniture. It's well constructed, but from sanding and inspecting it, it is particle board. This video is geared towards beginners. I'm going to show you all the steps you need to prep this factory finish, and I'm going to be using an all-in-one paint, so it's going to go a lot quicker and there's no need to top coat. This video is sponsored by Dixie Belle Paint Company. I'm using their Silk all-in-one paint for my makeover, and if you want a chance to win $100 to their website, all you have to do is subscribe to this channel, go subscribe to Dixie Belle's channel, and leave a comment below letting me know if you've ever painted a piece of furniture before. To prep this dresser, I'm going to remove all the hardware and I'm going to save it in a bag. This hardware is 3¼ inches apart. It's really hard to find replacements for it, and I think when I get a solid color on here and gild this hardware, it's going to look really beautiful and classic with the piece. So I'm just taking it all off, saving it, and I'll be making it over later in the video. This has never happened to me before. I cannot figure out how to get these drawers out. Like, usually there's a little thing tucked under here that you can get them off the drawer stop, but like, I have tried everything and I can't get these drawers out, so I'm gonna have to paint them with them in, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, before I get started painting with my all-in-one silk paint, I need to prep this piece, and there's 3 things that I need to do to prep this factory finish to make sure that my paint is gonna stick. And the first thing I'm gonna do is give the entire piece a scuff sand. You can do this with just a 220 sandpaper, just like this is a little sand pad, or you can use sandpaper and do it by hand. If you have an orbital sander, you can use an orbital sander. This is just gonna save you a lot of time and a lot of labor. I have very expensive sanders, but I am going to do this like I'm a beginner, like you at home. So if you're willing to invest the $50 in an orbital sander, you can do that. I'm also sanding down these flowers. They were really raised and textured, and I don't want to see that come through my paint, so I need to remove those completely. And then I'm just taking a tack cloth and wiping away all that dust I created by sanding. For the next step, I am propping up my piece with some painter's pyramids. This is just going to make it easier to paint and help it not get stuck to my drop cloth. I'm sealing up any exposed MDF or particle board with a clear acrylic spray paint. These spots would warp with any water-based primer or paint, so I want to make sure they're sealed up before I start. After we sand everything, I am going to give it a good cleaning with my Dixie Belle White Lightning. So it's just a little powder TSP soap that I have dissolved in a spray bottle with some warm water. Spray the entire thing, wipe it down, clean it, and then come back and wipe that clean with water. This does have a primer in it that helps with stain bleed through, but what we're really worried about here, because this is really slick factory finish, we just want to give it something extra to help the paint adhere really well, and that is what Slick Stick is going to do. I'm going to apply the Slick Stick with my synthetic angled mini. This is the same brush that I'm going to use for my paint, so it works well for both. Like I mentioned earlier, the all-in-one paint I'm going to use does have a stain blocking primer in it, but I'm using this primer for adhesion because this is a factory finish and it's really slick. Even though I've cleaned it and I've sanded it back a little bit, this is just going to give the paint something extra to stick to and make sure that it lasts. This first coat will dry in 2 to 3 hours, and then I come back in and I like to sand it with a really fine sandpaper in between coats. The second coat goes on just the same as the first one, but you need to let that one dry overnight to help it really bond and adhere to the piece before you add paint. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's always a good idea to remove drawers, but I could not get these drawers out, so for the second coat I'm painting it with the drawers open. Once I let this dry overnight, I came back in and did that quick sanding and dusting off before I'm grabbing my paint. And I just want to note, it is always a good idea to wear a respirator when you're sanding. I know that's a lot of prep, but it's going to be worth it because we're going to save time painting with this all-in-one paint. I'm going to be using the mini angle brush that I used earlier on the primer. This color is called Hampton Olive and it's so pretty. You need to make sure that your paint is stirred up really well. You don't want to see chunks like that, so keep stirring and stirring it until it runs smooth like this. You want to apply this with a dry brush. So this is the brush that I use to paint my primer with, but I have let it dry completely overnight. When you're painting this on, you just want to keep your strokes pretty simple, back and forth. Don't do crazy patterns. Just try to keep it as smooth as possible and watch out for drip marks. A synthetic brush like this is going to be your best friend. It's going to keep your paint smooth, and this does level out as it dries. The only true way to get a brush stroke free finish is to use a sprayer, but that definitely is not beginner friendly. So try not to be too picky about brush strokes. Trust me, this will even out and look really beautiful. The reason I love this paint for beginners is you're not going to have to worry about choosing a top coat because this has a built-in top coat. It's going to dry to a low reflective finish, so it looks like a satin finish, and it has really great durability. It's easy to wash and clean once it cures, and I'm actually going to show you my daughter's dresser that I did a year ago. This thing is in a kid's room and it has held up, and it's white. I can't believe how good it still looks. So the proof is right here, you guys, in my home, tested with my kids who beat things up. And the drawer debacle continues. After I did the first coat, I came back and pulled these drawers out. They were pretty dry at that point and did the top parts of the drawers. It's also a good idea to have some small artist brush on hand so you can get any hard to reach places. The first coat dries in about 2 hours and the coverage is pretty good, but you can see it's spotty, so we need to get that second coat on. Again, sanding in between coats is just always your best friend, so if you have the patience to do it, go ahead and do it. It definitely isn't necessary, but it's just going to give you a smoother finish. I'm going to give you some beginner's tips as I'm painting this side, because sometimes I just think painting is painting, but it's good to know how somebody does it. So typically when I'm doing a piece like this, I will go with the wood grain, but this piece didn't have wood grain because it had a coating over top of it. So I can go side to side with no issue here, and that's the shortest distance. So that's what I'm gonna do because it'll help me keep a wet edge, and I'll show you what a wet edge is in a second, but I always just start at the top and I kind of start in the middle like this so that I'm not glooping a lot of paint right here or on this side because that is where you will get drips. So I just get a little bit of paint on and I do it right in the center, and then I kind of feather that out to the side. And I'm really careful when I go out to the sides, and sometimes I need a little bit more paint, but it looks like I got enough here. And I will go back and forth like this, back and forth, stop and start. And then before I move on to the next section, it doesn't matter which way you go. I'm gonna go this way, and I just make one long pass to get those stop and start marks out. Then I'll get more paint, come back again, start in the middle. And I'm feathering in to this part that is wet, and that's what I mean by a wet edge, because as this dries really quickly, it will start pulling the paint off. So you want to have a wet edge and you want them to blend into each other. So I'm probably going back up into this about 20%. And now I'm out of paint again, so I'm gonna get just a little bit of paint. Again, start here and just kind of feather it out. Being really careful on those edges. I'm gonna come over here and feather this out a little bit. Make sure I got a lot of paint, enough paint on there. I'm covering all that. And now I'm gonna do my long pulls. And then I'm just gonna do that again. So that's my technique. It's not, you know, a standard, it's just what works for me. So I wanted to share that with you. If you find a way that works better for you, very cool. I just make sure that I have enough paint, again, to get rid of those stop and start motions. I'm just gonna do one long pass before it dries. Now, I will tell you, do not go back up here and try to fix something at this point if you see something wrong, because it will mess up your paint. This is already drying. I can see it, it's already drying here. This is a quick drying paint. So if you mess up something, just leave it. You can come back and smooth it out with some sandpaper after everything dries. Since these drawers are really curvy and broken up into different sections, I'm just making sure that I'm doing this section smooth, but I don't have to run my brush all the way across the drawer. And for the second coat, I decided to pull each drawer out and paint it that way. And again, using that Urdish brush for those hard to reach places.
Okay, so I saved all my hardware because it is a weird size, so it would be hard to replace. It's gonna be cheaper just to update what I have, and the style really matches the style of the piece, the Provincial, but I don't want the white anymore. So since it's already painted, I have two options. I can use a gilding wax. I have bronze and gold, and then I also have a water-based gemstone mousse in the color amber. So I could use any three of these things to update it just with a little bit of cleaning. So I've swatched all three colors out and I'm putting them over my Hampton Olive, and honestly they all would look really beautiful, but for the style I'm going, the most subtle option is the bronze gilding wax. It's a little bit brown, so it's really gonna give it like a monochromatic look, but look very updated, very sophisticated. So I think that is the winner. So to prep the hardware for gilding, I'm gonna clean everything with White Lightning, rinse it with water so there's no grime, residue, anything left on it. And then since these are painted, I can just go ahead and gild on top of that. I tested it out and it's gonna work. If you were just going right over metal, you can test the gilding wax on there, but I would recommend using Slick Stick on a metal that you don't know how it's finished. I've done that previously and it works really well. You can also gild over paint. So if you wanna paint the hardware first and then gild it, you can do either one of those. But since mine is already spray painted, I'm good to go. This gilding wax dries in 4 hours, so you can add additional coats after that if you want to. And after 12 hours, you can come back in and buff it up to a nice shine.
Once all my buffing was done, I applied all the hardware. Making over hardware like this is going to save you a lot of money, and it's going to save you a lot of headache, especially if you have a piece like this that doesn't have a standard size measurement. Once I got these on, I just did a few little touch-ups with the gilding wax. Be really careful not to get this on your paint because it will stick and you won't be able to get it off. My next steps as a content creator are to stage and take pictures of this, but if you were painting this for yourself, you want to leave it alone for 21 to 30 days for it to cure down completely to its hardest state. During that time, it's going to be easy to scratch and mess up, so it's best just to leave it alone and not place it in your room for those 30 days. I know that's really challenging, but it's going to be worth it in the end. So just to remind you, here is the factory finish that we started off with, and here is our new custom finish. You guys, this piece turned out so beautiful. It would fit in today's home. I love this color. And you guys, this is easy enough for you to do. If you're a beginner, you can get a finish like this in your home. It's possible. So see, I'm gonna take all this stuff off very, very carefully, and I'm gonna let it cure. I hope this encourages you that you are ready to tackle your own piece of furniture. I know you can do it. Thanks for joining me for today's video. I will be back next week with another project. Thanks for being here, you guys, and I will see you next time.